This is one of the strangest unsolved cases I could find. If you aren't asking yourself how and why at the end of this video, then please share with me any other thoughts that come to mind. In my opinion, it's a case that should have been solved, but took such a disturbing turn that I couldn't ignore it when it came to making this video. Join me for a ride through strange and mysterious here at Odd Mysteries Stories. Let me be very emphatic before I begin this story. I totally support and admire 99% of law enforcement people for the extremely hard work they perform. But in some cases like this one, we must remember these are still human beings who are fallible and sometimes make mistakes. To the ones that get it right and protect us from harm, thank you so much. Now let's get into this story. Imagine waking up on what should be one of the most exciting days of your life, the first day of your senior year in high school. You would typically have countless enjoyable events and moments to look forward to in the months ahead. But for Marty, a 17-year-old living in the affluent neighborhood of Belle Terre in Long Island, New York, this day turned into a nightmare. He awoke to a reality so brutal and shocking it defied belief. His parents had been brutally assaulted. Seymour Tankleff and his wife, Arlene, were the very picture of a life well lived. They were wealthy, resided in a beautiful home, and were pillars of their community. They had an adopted son, Marty, whom they cherished deeply. Seymour was not just a successful businessman, but also a man who loved to be surrounded by friends and family, often hosting gatherings and reveling in the joy of companionship. However, the friendliness of a card game night, a routine event in the Tankleff household, ended in an unforeseen tragedy that would alter Marty's life forever. The laughter and light-hearted banter of the previous evening were replaced by a chilling silence, marking a stark end to the innocence and security that once filled Marty's world. His journey from a carefree teenager, eagerly anticipating his final year of high school, to a young man enveloped in a harrowing ordeal, is both heartbreaking and unsettling. It's a stark reminder of how swiftly life can change, transforming moments of anticipated joy into profound sorrow. On the morning of September 6, 1988, in a quiet neighborhood of Belle Terre, what Marty encountered that morning was something far more sinister and heartbreaking. Leaving his bedroom, Marty noticed something unusual. The lights in the house were still on, just as they had been the night before. The doors were unlocked, and he realized that the burglar alarm had never been activated. A sense of unease began to grow as he moved through the house. His heart stopped when he found his mother, Arlene, lifeless in her bedroom. The scene was horrific, but nothing could have prepared him for what he saw next. In the room where his father, Seymour, had hosted a card game just hours earlier, he found his father bloodied and barely clinging to life. In a desperate attempt to help, Marty wrapped a towel around his father's bloody neck and placed a pillow under his feet. His mind racing, he called 911 and then ran to a neighbor's house, seeking more help. The tranquility of their Long Island home was shattered, replaced by the chaos of an unfolding tragedy. When the emergency personnel arrived, Marty was frantic. He shared his suspicion that a man named Jerry might be responsible for the attack on his parents. Detective K. James McCready from the Suffolk County Police Department arrived at the scene at 7:40 a.m. Marty repeated his theory about Jerry, but Detective McCready quickly began to develop a different theory altogether. In this quiet corner of Long Island, a community known for its peace and safety, this brutal attack on the Tankleff family sent out shockwaves of disbelief and fear. Imagine how this young man must have felt. As the morning of September 6, 1988 continued to unfold with bewildering and alarming developments, Myron Fox, the godfather of Marty and the family's attorney, arrived at the scene at 8 a.m. His intention was clear. He planned to take Marty to John T. Mather Memorial Hospital to be with his father, Seymour, who was fighting for his life in critical condition. However, Detective McCready intervened, misleadingly informing Fox that Marty had already been taken to the hospital. In reality, Marty was still at home, being held for questioning by the police. The situation grew increasingly complex and distressing. Marty, desperate to be by his father's side, requested to go to the hospital. Yet, The police denied his plea, insisting that he needed to be taken to the police station for further questioning. Meanwhile, Seymour was transferred to Stony Brook University Hospital, his condition precarious. As these events unfolded, a shocking and unfounded suspicion began to take root within the police investigation. Despite the lack of evidence to suggest Marty's involvement in the brutal attack on his parents, he was hastily labeled the prime suspect. The police, influenced by a narrative that painted Marty as a spoiled adopted child unhappy with his affluent life, speculated that he had meticulously cleaned up the crime scene, hence the absence of evidence against him. Upon arrival at the police station, Marty, still reeling from the morning's horrific events, was unaware that he was effectively under arrest. His rights, including being read his Miranda rights and the opportunity to speak with his family's attorney, were denied. Moreover, given his age, Marty was not provided with an adult advocate, a critical oversight in such grave and complex circumstances. As the investigation into the brutal attack on the Tankleff family progressed, Marty found himself in an increasingly precarious and distressing situation. He was subjected to an intense interrogation that lasted 5.5 hours. During this grueling ordeal, he was offered nothing more than a cup of coffee, no food, and was under relentless pressure from the police. Despite the overwhelming circumstances, Marty maintained his innocence. He was unwavering in his assertion that he had no involvement in the tragic events that had befallen his parents. In a bid to prove his innocence, he even suggested undergoing a polygraph test. Detective McCready, however, pursued a different line of reasoning. He posited a theory to Marty that he might have blacked out during the incident, committing the heinous acts without any recollection. McCready went as far as to construct a hypothetical scenario of the attack, trying to convince Marty that he was responsible. In a moment of extreme pressure and confusion, Marty conceded that such a scenario was possible. However, he quickly recanted this concession, reaffirming his stance that he did not attack his parents. Despite this, McCready interpreted Marty's momentary concession as a verbal confession. He proceeded to type up a written confession, but Marty, standing firm in his innocence, refused to sign it. Importantly, he was never even shown what McCready had written. The tragic saga took another turn when, on October 6, 1988, Seymour Tankleff, who had been clinging to life in a state of unconsciousness since the attack, passed away. He never regained consciousness, and thus was never able to shed light on the identity of his assailant. In the aftermath of Seymour's death, the situation for Marty, already fraught with grief and confusion, escalated dramatically. Despite the absence of a signed confession and the questionable nature of the interrogation, Marty was charged with the murders of both his parents. The community, which had once been a haven for the Tankleff family, was now the backdrop to a narrative of suspicion and accusation, with Marty at its center. This charge marked the beginning of a complex legal battle, intertwining issues of justice, truth, and the limitations of law enforcement practices. Marty, a young man who had just embarked on his senior year of high school, found himself entangled in a fight not just for his freedom, but also for his very identity and truth. The story of the Tankleff family tragedy had morphed into a saga of legal and moral complexity, capturing the attention of not just the local community, but also the nation. In June of 1990, Marty was convicted on the first-degree murder of his father and the second-degree murder of his mother. The conviction was based on the brief verbal confession that McCready testified Marty gave to him. Marty was sentenced to 50 years in prison. No other suspects were ever investigated, although multiple people came forward to police stating they felt a man by the name of Jerry Stuerman was responsible for the murders. The same man Marty had named the day he discovered his parents' brutal beatings. Amid the tumultuous investigation surrounding the Tankleff family tragedy, a significant figure emerged, Jerry Stuerman, a business partner and friend of Seymour Tankleff. Together, they co-owned a bagel shop, a successful venture by all accounts. However, beneath the surface of this business partnership lay a troubling detail. Jerry owed Seymour a substantial sum of money, amounting to $500,000. Jerry's associations extended beyond the realm of legitimate business. He was known to hang around with some unsavory characters, individuals linked to career criminal activities. When faced with problems, Jerry had a reputation for turning to the Hells Angels, a notorious motorcycle gang, to employ intimidation tactics and, when necessary, physical violence. On the night preceding the horrific attack on the Tankleffs, Seymour hosted a poker game for friends, a common social event in their home. Jerry was among the guests that evening. The game stretched into the early hours, concluding around 3 a.m. with Jerry being the last guest to leave the house. In a chilling coincidence, Seymour was found in the very room where he had last been seen with Jerry just a few hours earlier. Near the scene of the crime, documents were discovered confirming the financial debt Jerry owed to Seymour. However, in a surprising turn, the police did not deem these documents as relevant evidence in the investigation. The plot took an even more bizarre twist when Jerry, upon learning that Seymour had initially survived the attack, decided to fake his own death. He withdrew $15,000 from the joint business bank account, donned a disguise, and fled to California. His attempt at deception was poorly executed rather than sparking a death investigation. He was merely reported as a missing person. When authorities eventually located Jerry in California, Detective McCready personally went to retrieve him. Jerry confessed that his elaborate ruse of faking death was motivated by a fear of becoming a suspect in the attacks on Seymour and Arlene Tankleff. Despite Jerry's suspicious actions and his direct connection to the Tankleffs, the detectives did not view him as a suspect. They seemed to believe that he was incapable of committing such a crime. His behavior, even with its peculiarities and his financial indebtedness to Seymour, did not raise any alarms within the police force. This development in the case added a layer of complexity and intrigue. While Marty, a grieving son, was quickly labeled as the prime suspect and subjected to an intense and arguably manipulative interrogation, Jerry Stuerman, with his questionable associations and financial motives, remained largely unscrutinized by law enforcement. As the investigation continued, the contrast in the treatment of Marty and Jerry by the authorities painted a perplexing picture, raising questions about the direction and fairness of the investigation. Do you find this as strange as I did? Let me know in the comments, but there is more. Despite the conviction that had upended his life, Martin Tankleff never lost the support of his family, who steadfastly believed in his innocence. In a twist of fate, the case took a dramatic turn in 2001 when J. Salpeter, a retired New York City homicide detective, decided to take a fresh look at the Tankleff murders. Salpeter's investigation unearthed startling revelations. He discovered that Jerry Stuerman's son was involved in illegal activities, specifically selling cocaine out of the bagel store co-owned by his father and Seymour Tankleff. More shockingly, one of the son's friends had been boasting for years about his involvement in the Tankleff murders. Delving deeper into these leads, Salpeter made a crucial breakthrough. He identified an accomplice who confessed to being the getaway driver on the night of the murders. This revelation shattered the initial theory of the case, indicating that multiple individuals were involved in the brutal attack on Seymour and Arlene Tankleff, and crucially, that Martin was not among them. Salpeter's persistence led to the discovery of multiple witnesses who could corroborate this new narrative. One particularly pivotal witness, Glenn Harris, provided a sworn statement claiming he had been the getaway driver for two hired hitmen, Joe Creedon and Peter Kent. According to Harris, these men were contracted by Jerry Stuerman and were paid $25,000 for the execution of the crime. In an attempt to bring this crucial testimony to light, Harris sought immunity in exchange for his cooperation. However, Judge Stephen Braslow denied this request. Faced with the denial of immunity, Harris invoked his Fifth Amendment right, leading to his testimony being excluded from the case. Another witness stepped forward, alleging that Creedon had long bragged about his role in the Tankleff murders. However, the path to justice was fraught with legal hurdles and complexities. The revelations brought forward by J. Salpeter and the witnesses he uncovered painted a starkly different picture of the events of September 6, 1988, raising serious questions about the initial investigation and Marty Tankleff's conviction. As the new evidence and testimonies came to light, the case against Martin Tankleff began to unravel, revealing a web of deceit, missed opportunities, and overlooked leads. The journey to uncover the truth was marked by setbacks and legal challenges, yet it also shed light on the potential miscarriage of justice that had taken place years earlier. The revelations about the involvement of Stuerman's son and his associates, particularly the roles of Creedon and Kent as alleged hitmen, offered a stark contrast to the narrative that had led to Marty's conviction. The case, once thought to be a straightforward act of patricide by a disgruntled adopted son, now appeared to be a complex plot entangling various individuals with motives rooted in financial gain and criminal activity. This turn of events not only cast doubt on the fairness of Marty's trial, but also highlighted the fallibility of criminal investigations and the judicial system. As the new evidence mounted, it became increasingly clear that Marty Tankleff might have been wrongfully convicted, a victim of circumstantial evidence and a rush to judgment. The quest for truth and justice in the Tankleff case continued, driven by the relentless efforts of J. Salpeter and the unwavering belief of Marty's family and supporters. The revelations unearthed by Salpeter's investigation opened the door to a re-examination of the case, offering a glimmer of hope for Marty Tankleff and those who believed in his innocence. It certainly seemed at this point there was a huge turn in the case. The unfolding of events in the Tankleff case took a significant turn following J. Salpeter's groundbreaking investigation. Armed with the new evidence that pointed towards Martin Tankleff's innocence and implicated others in the crime, his legal team filed a motion for a new trial. This set in motion a series of evidentiary hearings that would prove pivotal in the pursuit of justice. As the hearings progressed, the defense team conducted further investigations, unearthing a staggering amount of evidence. Over 24 witnesses came forward, each contributing pieces to a complex puzzle that increasingly exonerated Martin while implicating other figures. The narrative of the case began to shift dramatically, painting a picture starkly different from the one that had led to Martin's conviction. One of the most startling revelations was the alleged connection between Jerry Stuerman, his son, and the lead detective on the Tankleff murder case. Eyewitness testimonies suggested a close friendship between Stuerman and Detective McCready. Further evidence emerged, painting Jerry Stuerman and his son not just as business partners in a bagel shop, but as drug dealers who had gone to the extent of hiring hitmen to murder Seymour and Arlene Tankleff. The extent of this alleged collusion was further underscored by claims that Detective McCready had been bribed by the Stuermans. This alleged corruption within the Suffolk County law enforcement raised serious questions about why the investigation had not scrutinized Stuerman more closely, despite his having the means, motive, and opportunity to commit the murders. Amid these revelations, the handling of the case by the district attorney came under scrutiny. Despite the apparent conflicts of interest, the DA did not recuse himself from the case. This decision was particularly controversial, given his prior legal representation of Stuerman's son in a case related to cocaine sales in the bagel shop. This connection added another layer of complexity and potential bias to the already convoluted case. Rumors and allegations of corruption within the Suffolk County law enforcement further muddied the waters. There were whispers that some officers had been paid off to ignore the illegal activities at the bagel shop. However, concrete evidence supporting these claims of corruption remained elusive, leaving room for speculation and doubt. The Tankleff case, with its myriad twists and turns, had become a labyrinth of legal and ethical challenges. The new evidence and testimonies highlighted not only potential miscarriages of justice, but also pointed to deeper issues within the law enforcement and judicial system. Marty Tankleff's fight for exoneration had grown into something larger than his individual case. It had become a symbol of the complexities and potential corruption of the criminal justice system. Marty Tankleff's legal team relentlessly pursued appeals of his conviction, culminating in a pivotal moment in 2003. An appeal hearing brought forward new evidence from a remarkable 20 witnesses. These witnesses not only implicated Seymour Tankleff's business partner, Jerry Stuerman, in the crime, but also testified that he had planned, executed, and even bragged about the murder. This testimony significantly shifted the focus of the case, casting new doubts on Marty's conviction. The efforts of Marty's legal team bore fruit in December 2007, when the New York Supreme Court Appellate Division delivered a unanimous verdict that vacated Tankleff's conviction and sentence. On December 27, 2007, Marty Tankleff, after nearly 18 years of fighting to prove his innocence, was finally released as a free man. But Marty's quest for justice did not end with his release. He was determined to hold accountable those responsible for his wrongful conviction and the failure to apprehend the actual perpetrator. He filed a lawsuit against the state of New York for wrongful imprisonment, which was settled for $3,375,000. In a further pursuit of justice, Marty sued Suffolk County and the detectives involved in his case, including Detective McCready. The lawsuit claimed they had willfully ignored evidence pointing to Jerry Stuerman as the murderer. Despite Marty's exoneration, Suffolk County prosecutors maintained their stance that he was responsible for his parents' deaths. However, Andrew Cuomo, the state attorney general at the time, acknowledged the insufficiency of evidence against Marty. In 2013, a significant development occurred when Jerry Stuerman was questioned about the murders in a legal deposition. This was the first time Jerry faced direct questioning in a legal setting regarding the case. However, he remained silent on the matter, invoking his Fifth Amendment rights a staggering 140 times during the deposition. The lawsuit also brought to light contradictions in Detective McCready's statements. He claimed to have had no prior interactions with Jerry Stuerman. However, this was contradicted by the fact that McCready had personally retrieved Jerry from California after he faked his death, revealing a connection he had previously denied. In a landmark decision, Marty was awarded $18 million from Suffolk County for their role in his wrongful conviction. This settlement not only represented a financial acknowledgement of the injustice Marty had endured, but also served as a symbol of the long overdue recognition of the flaws and biases in the investigation and prosecution of his case. The story of Marty Tankleff is a sobering reminder of the fallibility of the criminal justice system and the importance of relentless pursuit of truth and justice. Detective McCready passed away on January 14, 2016. Marty Tankleff is now a practicing attorney in the state of New York. He was sworn in during a February 2020 ceremony. He is only one of a small handful of exonerees to be able to practice law in the state of New York. While he has received some closure for what he endured, he still has not seen the man he believes is responsible for his parents' death pay for his crime. Jerry Stuerman was allowed to walk away a free man. Despite the evidence against him and his unusual behavior after the attack, charges have never been brought against him. Can you believe this, after all of the information that is available? There have been suggestions that the fact Martin wasn't attacked or killed is evidence that he was somehow involved in the plan. I personally don't believe this theory, although Garasio recalled his father, Creedon, saying something to the effect of that, quote, "I looked into Marty's room and saw he was asleep." Perhaps the attackers didn't want to risk the 17-year-old somehow being able to fight back, or, as others have suggested, they intentionally left him alive to have the murder pinned on him. In the aftermath of Marty Tankleff's exoneration and the subsequent legal battles, the focus inevitably shifted back to the unresolved question of who was truly responsible for the murders of Seymour and Arlene Tankleff. The overwhelming amount of witness testimony and accumulating evidence suggested that Jerry Stuerman was the mastermind behind the gruesome act. Yet, the case remained officially unsolved, a haunting and perplexing footnote in the annals of criminal justice. The investigation into the Tankleff murders was marred by missed opportunities and a lack of thoroughness in collecting and analyzing forensic evidence. Experts and observers alike believed that a more meticulous examination of the crime scene could have uncovered DNA fingerprints or shoe prints indicative of intruders, which would have provided crucial leads away from Marty and towards the actual perpetrators. The potential for such forensic breakthroughs, however, was overshadowed by the initial focus of the investigation on Marty as the primary suspect. Many argued that the case against Stuerman, who owed Seymour Tankleff a significant amount of money and had gone to the extent of faking his own suicide before fleeing to California, would have been more straightforward if Suffolk County law enforcement had not so singularly concentrated on Marty from the start. Stuerman's actions, which in any other scenario would have raised serious suspicions, were possibly intentionally overlooked as the investigation tunnel visioned on Marty. As time passed, the false conviction of Martin Tankleff became a cautionary tale in legal and law enforcement circles. It emerged as a prominent example used to educate law students and police officers about the perils of false confessions and the importance of thorough, unbiased investigation. The Tankleff case illustrated the devastating consequences of investigative and prosecutorial tunnel vision and the irreparable damage it can cause to individuals and families. Despite the glaring evidence and testimonies pointing towards Gerard Stuerman as the orchestrator of the murders, the likelihood of this case being conclusively solved dwindled. The Tankleff murders, with their complex web of missed opportunities, false leads, and questionable investigative tactics, seem destined to remain an unsolved mystery, a grim reminder of the fallibility of the criminal justice system and the enduring quest for truth and justice in the face of overwhelming odds. So here are my final questions for you. What do you think happened or should happened in this case? Do you think that this case will ever be solved? Do you think that Jerry Stuerman got away with the murders? Let me know in the comments. I so appreciate your support and engagement in my videos. My name is Vince, and if you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. If you would like to be notified when I post new content, please hit the bell. Otherwise, you can expect that I will post a new video each Monday and Friday. I also invite you to watch one of my other videos you see on the screen. Thank you.